Roucas Toumba.
You know, it kind of sounds like what they were chanting, like in the King Kong movie, like to get King Kong there.
Roucas Toumba, Roucas.
So the name's cool. Name's cool. And, you know, I like Roucas Toumba as a name, as opposed to, you know, maybe the name of the proprietor, which is the nice guy, you know, Eric Bulletin. But Bulletin, Vacqueyras, maybe not quite the role. You know, Bulletin sounds more like a pastry or something. And Roucas Toumba sounds like, dude, you're drinking some wine, right? Love the name. This is the Les Grands Chemins Vin de France 2011 from the very talented Eric Bulletin. And, well, he's talented, but on top of that, the cat's got one of the greatest vineyards in Vacqueyras, which Vacqueyras, you know, was an appellation, became an appellation later on. It was Côte du Rhône for a while, and then in the late 80s, achieved appellation contrôlée status alongside its neighbors, Châteauneuf-du-Pape and Gigondas. And since then, you know, Vacqueyras has been kind of finding its way as a premier appellation. You know, there's still a little bit of that Côte du Rhône stigma attached to it. But what we've been seeing in the last probably half dozen years, maybe since the 2005 or 2007 vintage, is Vacqueyras is kind of coming into its own. And a lot of these producers that previously were selling their fruit to the co-op and doing things a little differently are starting to make their own wines. And we're starting to see some of the premier terroirs from Vacqueyras come to the market. Eric was one of those cats. You know, his dad died at an early age. Eric was only 15 when his dad passed away. So for a number of years there, they had to sell the fruit to the co-op because they really didn't have the capabilities or the wherewithal to produce their own wine. But starting in 2000, Eric started to produce wine from their tiny little, I think it's about 8 acres, not very much, 3-hectare plot in Vacqueyras. They have fabulous vineyards, oldish vines, you know, 60, 85 years old, pretty damn old, but not like this, you know, 150-year-old vine thing. And I just like the way he goes about making wine. You know, he has taken a real, we bandy the word about, but almost like a Burgundian approach to the wines of Vacqueyras. There is a fineness to these wines without them sacrificing their southern Rhone roots. They're powerful and they're rich and fruity enough, but they have these wonderful kind of silky textures to them, which reminds you almost more of Pinot Noir with regards to the vinification. He's very minimalist all across the board, does pretty much a whole bunch of nothing, lets everything make itself, no new oak, no bells and whistles, etc., etc. And I really like the philosophy behind this particular wine, this Les Grands Chemins. It's a Vin de France, which I think started in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. You could actually label it with the vintage. Before, Vin de France could just be, I think it was supposed to be non-vintage. So now you could put 2011 on it. It is essentially declassified Vacqueyras. It's the lots of Vacqueyras that don't make it into his Big Daddy cuvee. And one of the cool things about this is that generally what he does with this, why it's a Vin de France, is he uses a nice chunk of the previous year's wine in the cuvee. So it's technically a vintage cuvee because it meets the minimum requirements of vintage, but there's a bit of the previous year's vintage, which this is a 2011 wine, which 2011 made really generous, fruity, soft, supple, easy wines in the Côte du Rhône. But you know, a chunk of this is actually from 2010. And 2010 was a hell of a year. So this wine got a nice little bump, you know what I mean? And you can taste it. You can taste it in the generosity of fruit in the mid-palate. But again, there is nothing trophy, culty, over-the-top, gooey, snappy about this wine. This wine is fine and poised and generously fruity, but in just a very natural, tender way. The tannins are fine, and you could just drink a whole bunch of it, right? And that's what great wine is all about, especially in these prices. You know, anything with a 1 in the price, it's about drinking it. It's not about, you know, taking 4 hours with the bottle. It's about, boom, we got that one. Okay, what are we drinking next? And I'll be darned if Eric Bulletin did not absolutely nail it with this wine. One of the most drinkable, enjoyable, beautiful, pure bottles of Rhone wine we have in the store.